Good afternoon for the people here in Sydney, where it's 5 p.m. And if you're watching from another place in the world, that is probably morning or afternoon. Welcome at today's broadcast. If you're here for the first time, my name is Monique Daal. I'm the author of No Limit Parenting, also the founder of the No Limit Parenting Revolution. I'm a developmental psychologist for children and a transformational life coach for women entrepreneurs, and I help them build meaningful and profitable businesses without sacrificing their families. And I do this through private coaching, online coaching programs, and international events. And I've been doing these lives for a couple of weeks now to share a little bit of the work that I'm doing and that I'm writing about in my book, as I just mentioned. And the framework in the book, but also in my coaching programs, are the 6 steps. I've showed it several times already. 6 steps, 6 C's, from confidence to clarity to concentration to courage to communication, and the final C stands for commitment. And we are in the week of communication. And I wrote a couple of blogs about communication yesterday and today, and I thought, let me jump on live again to share a little bit more in the studio with you. So, communication. Yesterday, in the blog post of yesterday, I already stated the importance of working on your communication skills, but also the importance to become aware of the importance of your words, because the words that you speak become your reality, just like your thoughts. So it's really important to be aware of the language that you're using about your life, but also about yourself. But the language words are also very powerful in the communication with other people, because it also affects others. So sometimes we don't even realize it, but as a parent, for instance, or as a boss, if you have your own business, or as a teacher, maybe you're a childcare educator, working with children, be aware of the power of your words, because I know several stories, and maybe you have one for yourself, where adult people still have some voices in their head from their parents or a certain teacher or coaches, whatever. So the words that you're using not only affects your own reality, but it also has a big impact on other people. And today I'm talk about the communication between parents and children, which is a challenging one, but also a very important one, because actually children learn how to communicate by the way that you as a parent communicate with them. So the family where they grow up, that's their first example of how to communicate, and they look at you and they experience the way you talk to them, and they will just imitate and take on your habits when it comes to communication, just like any other area of your life, everything that you do. And most parents, I've been giving communication training to parents for years, and most parents, of course, want to create like a happy, fun, bonding way of communication with their children. By the way, if you're here, I see a couple of people live. You can write in the chat, say hi or where you're from, because that's I really love to talk with you and answer your questions if you are watching and something is not clear or something. So please feel free to comment and to say where you're from and encourage me in my story or ask your specific questions. Yeah, so we all want this warm connection with our children, but still children can really challenge us. So I'm talking about myself as well. I know how it is. I have 4 children, and actually they're in a challenging age right now. You have, of course, the things when they are 2 and the terrible 2 and things, but now I have teenagers, and that brings a whole other scope of challenges. But still, you become very aware of the communication skills, and you you can be challenged, you can have a lot of arguments in your house, and you can feel really, really disappointed when you're not able to really connect through communication with one another. And it's frustrating for everybody, actually. So if it's your desire to have this warm, open, connecting communication, well, how do we do that? So that is what I will be talking about, and I will specifically share some key elements with you of the work of Thomas Gordon. Thomas Gordon was an American psychologist, and I have been very inspired by his work. He wrote several books about communication, but he also offered us a very practical framework about how to improve the communication within families. So that's what I want to share today with you. What are those key elements of his work? But also I want to touch the topic that actually the most important communication skill is listening, and it's an underestimated skill. And I will end today's podcast with some tips on how to set boundaries in a loving though effective way. So sometimes I will look on my paper, because to not forget anything, I wrote some notes down. So let me start with Thomas Gordon and the key elements of what is often called his framework, the language of acceptance. Because before you start communicating, it is very important that a really open and loving communication can only be there if you are willing and open to accept the other person exactly as he or she is. So especially between parents and children, sometimes children mirror certain behaviors or certain traits that we don't like that much in ourselves. So we get triggered when we see the same traits or behaviors in our children, and we can maybe subconsciously you don't want to see it, or you don't want it to be there, and that is something that the child will feel, and that will prevent him or her to open up as well. So a really good communication and building strong relationships is in the beginning all about really accepting the other person the way he or she is, good or bad, or if you like it or not, just accept the person as a whole. And the funny thing is that starts with self-love. And the first C of my framework that I just showed you is the C of self-confidence. And I spoke also a lot about self-esteem, self-image, self-love. And you can only accept the other person exactly as he or she is when you first really accept yourself. So here we are again, loving yourself and truly accepting yourself just how you are is the first step for happiness in life, but as in this case, also it's a condition to establish really open and loving communication. So it starts with you again. That's my message about parenting. It starts always with yourself. So loving yourself, accepting yourself will make it easier for you to also open up to the other person and be totally have this totally acceptance about the other person. And language is not only about the words that we speak, and especially young children are very sensitive for the non-verbal signs or signals that we give off when we communicate with each other. So, for instance, examples of non-acceptance are, for instance, a frowning of the brows, or pulling, I'm not sure how to say it in English, but pulling with your eyes, or sigh. Those are all non-verbal verbal signals that you can give in your communication, which make the child feel not accepted as he or she is. And on the other hand, signs of acceptance are, for instance, laughing, nodding, maybe a pat on the back, on the shoulder. And that will make the child feel accepted. And that is a condition for the child to really open up and share his or her thoughts and feelings with you. So, Important point to start if you're talking about communication is to really accept the other person and be open and willing to really listen. And that's my second point. The most important but underestimated communication skill is listening. And it seems so simple, but isn't it funny that all those years in school we learn everything about reading, writing, reading, writing, and speak, but we don't learn so much, or maybe nothing, about listening. And how do you listen to someone else in order to really understand the other person? Because that's the purpose of communication, right? That you understand each other's perspectives, each other's feelings, and that you can show your emotions to one another, which makes that you really bond or really have this warm connection that we all crave as human beings, because we are social human beings, so we crave for warm relationships. And listening is a really very important skill when you talk about communication. And you think, oh yeah, I'm a good listener. Well, are you really? Because when I started to give these trainings to parents about communication, I was very conscious with my own way of communicating, and I found that I was not such a good listener in the beginning, because you know what happens when somebody is talking to you and your own thoughts take over. So, and you just interrupt the other person by saying, oh, I had the same thing last week, or, oh, I know what you mean, you know what I do when I'm in that situation. So actually that is not really listening, because you're not really there with the other person, but you're in your own mind giving interpretations to what the other person is feeling and try to relate that to your own experiences. So really listening is actually to clear your head and be totally present for the other person. So to really create that space, just lay back, lay back, but just relax and really open up for the other person and try to clear your own mind. So not thinking about your grocery list or something in the meantime, because that will immediately affect your ability to really listen to what the other person is telling. So we are more trained to speak up and to give our opinion than that we are trained to really listen to another person. And that is the important thing if you really want to connect, to listen. And why is that so important? And you know, Thomas Gordon describes active listening in his books, and that goes even a step further, because active listening is connecting on an emotional level. So it's not only that you react to the words that the other person is using, but you try to connect, you try to figure out what is the feeling behind the words or beyond the words, and actually respond more to the emotion that is attached than to the actual words. So that requires that you show empathy, that you can take perspective, and that you can translate the verbal and non-verbal signals that the other person is giving you, that you can translate that to the emotions that the person is experiencing. And when you connect to that, the other person will feel really seen and heard. So for instance, I can talk a lot about, I have to do a presentation tomorrow, and I can talk about, oh, I'm not sure what to wear, and oh, I need to make some more slides, my presentation's not. And then you can say, oh, but you can react to the word, so come with practical advice about the slides or give advice about the clothing. But actually what I am showing you is that I'm quite nervous. So if you say, as a reaction to my story, like, oh, I can see you're very nervous, but you will be fine, you have done it before, and oh, you have so much knowledge to share, that will really give me the feeling that you understand you really see me, so that you react to the emotion of being nervous, being challenged, feeling insecure. So these are the underlying emotions under the story of I have to make some slides or I don't know what to wear. And that's the same in parenting situations when your child tells you a story about something that happened in school between peers maybe, that you really listen to the story and not so much go into the facts of the story, but that you try to relate to how that must have been felt for your child. So connect to the feelings and talk about the feelings. And then the child will be relieved and feel really understood. And at the end of the day, that is actually our biggest human basic need, that we want to be seen in our challenges and in our successes. And active listening is just doing that. You're giving that gift to another person to feel understood and to feel seen. And that is really a beautiful gift that you can give to another person, but especially to your children. It will give them a solid base of self-confidence. So active listening is really an important skill for everybody, but especially for parents or when you're working with children, it's really important that you master the skill of active listening to give this safe and solid foundation of self-confidence, self-awareness in the child. Are there any questions? Please write your questions in the comments if you have a question or you think, oh, that's easier said than done, because of course I hear that a lot. Then I will give an example. Imagine your 7-year-old child has cleaned her room. Your daughter, she cleaned her room. You asked her to do that, and you gave some instructions, and she started doing the first step of cleaning the room. Maybe there were a lot of clothes on the ground, and she took all the clothes and put them in the drawer. And then she comes to you and she said, oh, I've done that. And then you can react by immediately giving her the next assignment. So like, oh, and now you have to clean up all the books or all the toys. You have to put it in the drawer or whatever. You can do that. But imagine the child. How would it feel for this little girl if you say, wow, you did a good job. Yeah, you took up all, you cleaned all the clothes, you put them in place. Wonderful. Okay, now the next step is to. So first that acknowledgement, that is the active listening, because if a child comes to you and says, oh, I've cleaned my room, it might be feeling proud. But if you say, oh, and now you have to do this, then you don't see this little success or this feeling of proudness. But when you first acknowledge that and then give the next assignment, then the conversation will go very differently. In the first case, she might say, oh, but I already cleaned up the clothes, now I'm tired. But if you just acknowledge it, and then she feels motivated to do the next step. So that is the thing about active listening, to not really react, oh, you have done your first assignment, okay, you are asking for your second assignment. No, first acknowledgement of the, in this case, emotion of feeling proud, feeling good about them herself. So that is about active listening. But of course, in parenting, parents always say to me, yeah, but we need to set boundaries. And you're right, children need loving boundaries. That's what they ask for, that's what they thrive in. But how do you do that without ending up in an argument or in shouting and yelling? Again, Thomas Gordon, I didn't make this up myself, but Thomas Gordon wrote wonderful books about this, and he describes a method of working on win-win solutions. So he always says, you are important as a mother, your child is important. Marika, thank you for your question. I will go into that later after my sentence. So Gordon says, you are important and your needs are important as a parent, but the child is equally important, and the needs of the child also will be equally important, and the needs of yourself and the needs of the child will sometimes clash or conflict. And how do you cope with that? And then he gives wonderful tips on how to do that. And one important thing is that you talk to your child not about the child judging, but from your own perspective. So, for instance, you're just have settled yourself in the couch and you think, oh, I'm just going to read this article. I wanted to read it for the whole week, and and then your child comes in and maybe he wants to play music very loud, or he's playing with a car very loud, and you're distracted, and there goes your easy me moment. And you can then, the impulse might be like, oh, don't be so naughty, don't you see that I'm reading, go play somewhere else, or shut the music down. That is all about the child. The child is not doing it right, he needs to change his behavior, he needs to stop his activities. When you come from your own perspective, then you can start your conversation very different. And he says a good, effective way of setting boundaries is that you use 3 elements, and that is talk about the behavior of your child, talk about the consequence of that behavior, and mention your feelings, so your emotions. So in this case, you could say, oh, I just wanted to read this article, I just wanted this quiet moment for myself right now, but I see that you probably just wanted to play music or play with your toys. I understand that, but I feel really disrupted, so maybe you can take your things and do it somewhere else, or just wait a minute, I will be finished in half an hour, and then you can turn up the music or play with your toys, whatever. So it's about the behavior. Oh, you want to play music, or you're making noise with your toys, that's the behavior. The consequences that I got distracted, I cannot read, and I feel disappointed about that. So you talk from your own perspective. And the funny thing is, sometimes parents say to me, yeah, he does it intentionally because I know that irritates me. Believe me, children are really not thinking that way. They are just in their own world and reacting to their own impulses and own needs. And they're really not busy with trying to irritate you. That is something I hear quite often, and it really makes me sad, because then I think there's something wrong in the basis, in the foundation of your relationship. Because if there's no trust that you really want to take each other seriously, then you have to work on that foundation first, the foundation of trust. So you always have to believe in the good intentions of the other person, just like you want your child to think that you come from a positive intention. So it's clashes in families, it's almost always just a clash of needs. So I need this at this moment, and you might need something else. The child might need chilling with music, or making some noise, or movement, which is very natural for children. So it's not to disturb you, it's just following his own impulses. So Marika had a question, and she asked me, I have a 5-year-old, came home yesterday, and he told that during singing on school, he has been kicked by 2 bigger boys. Well, this is a good question. How would you react? This is exactly a good example to explain active listening, because often we as a parent, we want to know the facts. What happened? Did you do something that might trigger them to kick you? You want to know the facts, and maybe you want to go to school and react. And active listening is really trying to figure out what is the underlying emotion. So is he angry, which could be very impossible. So then you articulate that for him, that it's perfectly normal to have feelings of anger when someone kicks you, or maybe he wanted to kick back, or maybe he did, and that's also natural. Not that it's maybe the best solution, but it's natural. So giving room to talk about emotion. But the other thing, he can be sad, he can be scared to go back to school tomorrow. So the conversation really is not about what happened and who started and what did the teacher say or anything like that, which is mostly our first reaction, but to start with giving room to the underlying emotion and to see if you're right. So you can just ask, are you angry? And then the child will say no or yes. And when you have the right emotion, when you mention the right emotion, you will often see a feeling of relief. And that is that piece of I'm seen, I'm heard. And that is the basic need of us human beings. And when you're seen or when heard, then you can always talk about the facts later. But the first thing is to, the active listening is to figure out what is the underlying feeling and to give room to that and to have the conversation about that. And it's very important for children to listen to their emotions and to know that these emotions are totally normal, because for a young child, emotions like shame or guilt or anger or resentment can be very overwhelming, and they can think that that's wrong to feel those feelings. So that is a very important skill, because in adulthood, you will find that most people who experience problems in any area of their life, it's a lot of the times it's about not being able to cope with your emotions or to give room to your emotions, to articulate how you feel. So it is very important to teach your child from a young age all these nuances as well that you can have in emotions, because oftentimes when we're talking to a child, we're talking about being happy, sad, or angry. So those are three basic emotions, or happy, scared, but there are so many other layers of emotions like frustration, resentment, feeling in love, jealousy, maybe hate, or you can be angry, or can be mad, or can be outrageous. Those are different forms and levels, and it's important to give your child the vocabulary and the tools to cope with that and to express it. So I hope that answers your question. If not, let me know. But that is exactly what active listening is about. And setting boundaries is something that can only be effective in an environment where there is this foundation of trust and equality. So you're not using your power in the communication with children, because you have power. And for some children, that can be frustrating, that they can't make their own decisions. And for you, it seems natural. Of course, you cannot make your own decisions. I'm your mother. But for a child, that can be very frustrating. But it's fact of life where the child has to deal with. Oh, thank you, Marieke. So that is a good thing to have in mind. We sometimes underestimate it, and it seems like children more and more are self-reliant at an earlier age. And so they might feel that they can take their own decisions in some areas. And when you say, no, you're too young to make your own decisions, that can be a very frustrating thing. So be aware of that part as well. Setting boundaries. My final comment of the day is, again, it goes back to yourself. You can only stand up for your own needs when you're feeling confident, when you're loving yourself, and that's the only way that you can set your boundaries from a loving space. Because when you have this low self-esteem, or you have a lot of stress, then you will react, of course, otherwise to in everyday situations. So it's so important to fill your cup first before you can really be there for others. And I can't stress that enough, how important it is to take good care of you and to be clear in where your boundaries are. Sometimes, especially I see it with moms who have young children, they're really looking for boundaries. They don't want to be this angry mom, or some moms want to be the friends of their children. That's okay. You can have a warm relationship, but it's always important to set your own boundaries from an early age. That's how you also teach your children to respect their own boundaries. So finding a balance in being a nice and loving mom, but also protect your own space is a very important one. I can talk for hours over this about this topic. So if you're watching this in the recording or catching the replay, and you might have some questions, please put them in the comments. I come on this page daily, so I will always answer them if I see that somebody has questions. And if you think this was a valuable training or broadcast, please share it with others who might also benefit from it. So thank you again for being here. It's all about you, so I share all this information to help you create a warm and loving connections in your family, while also taking good care of yourself and your own desires and your own dreams. You really can have the best of both worlds as a mother. So how to connect them and how to live a truly fulfilling, rich and balanced life. That's my mission, to help you realize that for yourself. So thank you for being here. And tomorrow I will be talking about how to create a family mission. We are approaching the end of the year already, and in our family it has been a tradition for years now that around Christmas we make our family mission, or we re-evaluate it, and we make a plan for the next year. And it's all about how do we want to interact with each other, what are our common goals. And it's very nice to do that with your family, even if your children are very small. Our youngest was 2 years old when we started, and he already had really an active role in those conversations. So that's what I will be talking about tomorrow. And I will announce something really cool that I'm preparing, and I will announce that tomorrow officially, kind of officially. So I would love to see you tomorrow as well. I will post on this page what time I will go live. I will set up a time, and if you want, you can then ask to get a reminder so that you're sure that you're not missing it. So that was today's talk about communication. Tomorrow we're talking about how to make a family mission, and I have this awesome announcement for you. So be here. Thank you for watching, and feel free to apply for my free ebook, Juggling with Passion. As always, I will put the link below this video. Thanks and bye-bye.